Welcome everyone to Degenerate Podcast number 4. And today I have on Emma Upton. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Nervous, but good.
Yeah?
Thank
really
you.
nervous? Have you ever done anything like this before?
The podcasts that I have done have always been just online, so it doesn't feel this.
Okay, so just like on social media and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Is this a good setup, yeah?
This is very impressive. It was not what I was expecting.
You know what? When I was thinking about doing the podcast, I was like, I need to do it because I've always wanted to do a podcast ever since, probably for the past 12 months, really. I keep going on to people about it and they don't believe that I'm going to do it. And when it come to it, I was like, right, I need to do this now. I was so eager to do it before I got married as well. But I was like, I need to just concentrate on my marriage. Get this done.
Good. Well,
yeah, get this done. I thought I'd
good.
already working too much anyway. And I thought, I need to start this podcast. Just because every day I speak to so many people, tattooing them in art and everything like that. And so many crazy conversations I've had with people that I just wish I recorded. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, and that's another thing, Rob. I noticed that I always say, do you know what I mean? Too much. I noticed it in the first podcast, so we need to stop doing that.
You don't. That can be your phrase. Like that's the one. Don't just own it.
Maybe that's the name of the podcast. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, and I was speaking to so many people, and I was just like, oh my god, these people! I just wish I'd have recorded this conversation. Do you know what I mean? And just kept it. Said it again. Keep it in, like a folder, or go back to it one day and reminisce on that conversation. Yeah. So I thought, right, podcast is the one. That's when I got hold of Rob and thought I need to do this properly.
It is proper.
And, it
is proper.
So this is probably the one I've been most excited about, believe it or not.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, so I've had quite a few people on already, so this is the 4th one. But when I was in contact with you initially about, and I knew sort of what you was doing and spoke to Wade, and I thought, okay, this is going to be really good. Mm-hmm. And I noticed straight away when I contacted you on social media was you have such a motivating voice.
Oh.
Without you probably don't realise that. But when you give me like that voice note, I was just like, oh my God, I feel so good. I felt so good just from you talking on that voice note, which is absolutely...
That makes my heart feel amazing.
Yeah, and I noticed it straight away. I just thought just the way you talk is very, just very uplifting and inspiring. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what it is. It's just, I just listened to that and I thought, oh my God. I was like, and I was showing everyone, like, listen to this. I got Emma So what people will not know is that we are related.
We are, which is madness.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So we are, is it second cousins, I think?
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, second cousins. So yeah, it's pretty mad really that we've never really had a proper conversation.
No.
But no, it's really cool. So let's get started on this. So I've got a few points here that I want to talk about, but this is just going to be, you just be as comfortable as you can and talk about whatever you can.
Okay.
So I want you to explain to us what you do and why you do it.
Okay. That's a big question, isn't it? Because what I do and why I do it. So the reason that I got into this work is because I got into a space that I just was so lost. I was beyond lost, and I got really sick, and my sickness got the stamp of fibromyalgia, and the doctors literally said I was laying in bed, I was paralyzed from the waist down, I couldn't move, and the doctors were just saying to me, there's nothing wrong with you technically. I was going through for scans, I was having all of these tests that were all coming negative. And I remember going to this doctor, and I don't know who he is, but I'm so grateful for it. Like, I wish I could go and find him. And he was like examining me physically, and there was a little Shiva on his windowsill. And he looked at me in the eyes and he said, whatever is happening with your body, it's not your body that's the problem. It's your mind. I was like, fuck you. Like, you're not in my body. How dare you say? And I was so angry. And I left this hospital furious. But nothing else was working. I was raw vegan. I was doing yoga every day. I was like supplements and doing all the things that should have been making me better. And I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker until I started to try and figure out what was going on in my head. And when I started to figure out what was going on in my head, I started to heal physically. And then the healing went from my body, and I just started to create this life for myself that was just so far removed from anything that I'd known. I was a teacher at the time, and I was just functioning. That's what I was doing. I was just existing through life. Like, I'd get up in the morning and I'd just make my way to the evening again, and then I would just rinse and repeat. And that's when that phrase, which is my company, more than this, there is more than this, just started to play out in my head. And I'm like, there's more. So if I can do this to my body, what else can I do? And it just started to grow. And I just started to learn. I became a reader. I never read. And all of a sudden I was inhaling books. I've always got about 5 books on the go. And I just started to inhale books and started to learn all these things and started to implement them. And then they'd work. And I'd be like, yeah, that's good. But how about if we do this? Or if I explore this? And then I started to see people in my life that were having the same challenges, and they were just in this existence. I'd be like, well, we could try this if you want. And it worked. And then I started to grow it out, and I started to work with people outside of that and start to charge some money for it, and it worked. And then gradually I put together my own formula for how to help people get out of a space where they just feel so desperately sad and unhappy for no reason. I had no reason to be sad. I've got amazing parents who prioritized me from day one and loved me. I've got the most amazing husband, glorious friends. I've got twins who are just a dream on toast. There was no reason for me to be as sick as I was, and yet I was just existing through my life. So I created this formula that allowed me to just take myself out of that space, to just create a life that I couldn't imagine. And now that's what I teach to other people. And it works, and I've refined it so absolutely that if I connect with somebody and I'm like, I know that it's going to work. As long as they implement the 7 steps, I know that they're going to be able to just open up their whole world.
Wow.
It's mad.
That
Literally madness. I cry about my life most days now. I'm like, how does this get to be my life?
That's inspiring.
It's mad.
How did you get to that point where you was sick? Do you know what I mean? What was it that was driving that? And you obviously said that you've had this, you had nothing to feel sad about. There was nothing in your life that, that was particularly, standing out. What was it that you think, how did you get to that point where you was in that position?
I didn't feel powerful on any level. I was led by fear permanently. Every action that I took in my life was in the hope that something bad wouldn't happen. So, and it's all I remember. It's when I look back on core memories, like even being teeny tiny as a little girl, I look back and I'm like, I remember how sick I felt that Christmas morning. I remember, I would come home dinners at school and I'd be sick before I went back to school again. I was just had this high functioning anxiety just permanently. I was afraid of the world permanently, but I was dead good at putting on this persona to the world that I was great and that everything was fine. And I made sure that everybody else was great and that everybody else was fine. And it became my dopamine hit, that chemical inside your brain that makes you feel good. It became my dopamine hit to serve everybody else. But my belief is that we're here to serve, and I'm able to serve in the best way that I could ever imagine. I truly believe that's our life purpose, to have a gift and to give it away. But I wasn't working from that expansive space. I was working from a space of, I am on the floor. The only way I get to feel better is to do things for other people to make them feel good. But the problem is we're all messed up. So you'd give to people and they just want more because then they felt good taking from you. And then you just get in this entangled mess with all these people that are in your life. And it's just this convoluted strangeness that you can't navigate your way out of. So high functioning anxiety got me to the depths of where I was.
What was that? The anxiety, what do you think that was driven by though? What was that? Just something that you it grew inside you during your childhood, or was there something that was triggering that?
It's a good question. You can say, can't you? Some people have like a lady that I'm working with at the moment, like her sister died, and that was kind of the catalyst for her life getting really different. There is nothing in my life that happened to me to mean that I should have been led by fear the way that I am. I think as a society, without getting political because I hate politics, but as a society, like we're fed on fear. That fear is out there for us all.
Control,
and just to make sure that we're all smushed down and doing exactly what we need to be doing. So being in and around that environment from being small, and our parents loving us so intensely, but ultimately are driven by fear, and we learn from our parents, don't we? And we learn from the adults around us that we're all like, have that fear and that repression. I can't see other than that as anything else that drove it. I really can't.
Interesting.
No, there's no.
So I was my dad was he suffered really bad with all sorts of anxiety, social anxiety, and everything, like to the point where he would be sick most days from it. And I remember once it was my 21st birthday, and he was really wanting to do something for me, and we went out for a meal for my 21st, I had my mates, and he was there, and it meant so much to me because he was so uncomfortable in that situation. And you could see, and he couldn't even eat, he didn't have any food, but just the fact he was there and he was sweating, and it was just this, so I've never seen anyone like that before, and I understood, because I'd never seen that before. I never understood why he had social anxiety, but when I seen him in that position, I felt it a lot more, and how fucking horrible it is. But he could go to the football game, watch a football game, and be absolutely great.
The mind is a fucker, because for some reason your mind gets a message that that's dangerous and this is safe. So the message that your dad had, because the mind, that's my favorite thing to learn about, because this is my work. As soon as you realize that mind fuckery of it, you're sweet. As soon as you can see, hang on a minute, does it make any logical sense that a football stadium with 50,000 people is safe, and a pub with my son and 20 people having some food that's fine, that's really dangerous? It makes no logical, rational sense, but we're not driven by that. So my interpretation of how we work is that we have the conscious mind. So what you're explaining there about your dad's scenario is, in his conscious mind, he believed a story that what I just said about the football being safe and that the pub being not. Now, the reason for that is because the deeper level of the way that we work in the unconscious part of us, we have stories and emotions tucked up tight in there. And that controls us 100%. And if we're not aware of what's sitting in there, which is all of the things that have happened to us, all of the thoughts that we've had about different things, all of the sensory experiences that we just take on that we've got no idea even exist, they all sit within there. And unless you can't access that, there's no way of accessing that. The only thing that you can actually actively gain access of is your conscious brain that just sits on the top. So your dad could tell you football's fine, pub's not, but he had no understanding why, because it's sitting in the unconscious. That's what the work is, figuring out what is sitting in that unconscious part of you. And when you can, and you can start to explore that, and you have to be able to do it consciously, you have to be able to like marry the two up, and that's a skill, and a skill that I teach. But when you do and you can actually start to link it all. So your dad would be able to actively say, like, I know it makes no sense here, and yet I'm going to sit here and shake like a leaf and not be able to eat. doing the work, doing mindset work means that you can actively go, I know I'm safe. I can sit here and I can eat, just like I can go to the football with all of these people and have a hot dog. Like, it becomes one and the same, but you can't do that. We're not taught that. It should be taught in primary school. Like, we should be taught it. My babes are taught it. Like, I'm permanently talking to them about how their mind works and how they can take control of it, and how that it's a little monkey and that it will play tricks on you if you are not on the lookout for those tricks, and start to create those stories.
Do you think that the generation we're in now, this is coming more to the front hold of society because of how the world is now? Or is it something that's been around for a long, long time and it's just not being spoken about? Or is society today and how social media is, it's heightened every little thing? Like, my dad, I know, was conscious about his weight and all these little things that maybe 100 years ago wasn't a massive thing. Do you know what I mean? I don't know whether it's just social media has took a part of that, and it's you know, everything's about, this is how you should look, this is how you should eat, this is how you should do this is how you should do that, and this is what society is that drove that, do you think? Or has this been around for a long, long time?
So are you asking, have the problems been, like, as humans, are we flawed and those flaws have always been there and it's just been intensified?
Has the mind been, obviously thousands of years ago, as the mind, it was all about survival, you know?
Yeah.
So that was the primary thing, surviving, eating. And now the brain is now, it got different challenges. It's not about that anymore because we've achieved that, you know?
Yeah.
So how society has changed, it's adapted to this, and everything's becoming heightened because of that reason. Do you know what I mean?
Got it. Yeah. Thank you. The brain is the brain, unfortunately. Like, the primitive part of your brain, we can't overcome it, and that's the biggest difficulty. And like you say, we have everything we need. Like, we have everything. We're so privileged. We have everything in surplus, and yet we're still running around acting like we need to be terrified and there's going to be a bear in the camp and we all need to be on high alert. Like, that fear is the amygdala, like the part of your brain. You can learn how to come into your body, you can learn to meditate, you can learn to do all of these skills, which mean that you can manage all of this so much more beautifully. But you are not going to override that software, and it doesn't matter how brilliant. Like, I am bomb at my mindset stuff now. The conversations that I have with some of my mentors who have been spiritual masters for a very long time are like, holy moly. And yet the humanness of us all still remains, because we're here having this human experience. We have the same brain from all that time ago. It's just when we see everything, like, social media is brilliant. Like, I'm so grateful for the experience that it gives businesses like ours. Like, it's amazing, isn't it? On so many levels. But for a really long time, I couldn't go on social media because my mental health was so poor that I just had to avoid it, because it would just stir that lack and that fear, which is that primitive part of you, because the brain isn't busying itself looking at beautiful flowers when it just needs to be thinking about where the next meal is going to be coming from. It needs to be thinking about whether it's going to get eaten alive, whether the tribe that you're in is going to turn its back on you, and like, you always have to appease them. It's all of these parts of the brain that are some of our most debilitating parts of us. They're all inbred for survival. The problem is now we don't need to survive, yet that is still going and we don't know what to do with it. So everything feels heightened. So that need for food and looking for food, that's still there. That's why we get overweight. That's what it's still there. It's instinct in us, and you can't switch it off. You can't.
Right, I'm going to divert a little bit here.
Go on.
So, you was a teacher. What did you used to teach?
I taught primary school, so
everything.
I taught everything all the way up to school, and I was starting to create this business. And my last head teacher was doing everything that he could in his power. We've got such a glorious relationship that he just wanted to keep me. So I went right the way through the school to little nursery babies, so 2-year-olds by the time that I finished.
Yeah.
So I've been all over.
So was you in teaching quite early on then? Did you go to university? I imagine, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. How did you find teaching?
I loved it. So my first teaching qualification I got when I was in Thailand, and I taught in different spaces and places in Thailand. My favorite place being an orphanage that I taught at. It was just magical. And then I came back to the UK and I converted my English literature degree into a teaching degree. And then I went into teaching, and I didn't think I liked teaching because, again, my mental health was so poor that I just affiliated anything that I was doing. Like, it was everything else that was a problem. It was never me that was the problem. So my teaching experience to begin with was really poor. And then, of course, again, through fear, the brain wants to take you to what you've always known. That primitive part of the brain says, we're safer in our camp with our tribe. Let's not risk going to another camp where they might kill you because we have to survive. So that part of the brain keeps us stuck. So I stayed at my first primary school for a very long time. I'm a big believer in that nothing happens by coincidence, that everything happens for a reason. When you reached out to me and you're like, shall we do this? I'm like, it is terrifying, but we're meant to for whatever reason. So, okay, we'll do. And my twins, who I thought were my answer, again, because we think everything on the outside of us. I had a nice house, I had a nice car, I had fancy handbags, we were going on nice holidays, I've got a gorgeous husband. Like, I was like, it's got to be a baby. Babies are the missing link here. And then I had twins. I'm like, jackpot, I'm just going to feel great now. And I felt, like, they're amazing, but I just got more sick. I was taking my babes to this mother and toddler group that I'd never been to before. And I was like, right, we'll just go. We'll get out the house and we'll go. And one of the ladies there was a teacher, and she said to me, there's a job going at the school just up the road. I was working in Tamworth, so like 45 minutes away at the time. She said, but it's only Thursday and Friday and I can't get childcare for a Friday. I was like, oh, well, I can. Like, that's interesting. So I went to this school and met the head teacher, and he was talking to me about the values of the school and how they prioritize children's learning. And I was like, oh, this all sounds really good. And my brain's going, don't do it. Like, you'll die. And I don't know how, because I was so poorly at the time, but I chose to move to a different school. And that school taught me how teaching can be. And they gave me space to be able to just teach and get into that environment and be able to connect with the children before they were doing learning walks and all the other stuff that the education system's just got so lost in. And then I realized, I do like teaching. Like, I've been teaching for 10 years and it didn't feel like this. This is all right. So yeah, that's the long answer to, I liked it.
Because my dad was a teacher for about 7-8 years, I think. And he absolutely loved teaching. Loved it. He said, but the problem was the bullshit around it that really drove him out of it. And he used to teach, so he was teaching construction. Mm-hmm. So he'd get all the throwaways from high school that, they didn't want to push much further, and they thought, right, well, we'll chuck you into this. Yeah. And he related to them, all of them, because they were, they'd all had staggered sort of childhoods and issues with parenting and stuff. So he understood them a lot better, and he could relate to them, and he knew that it was a different sort of teaching. You've sort of had to do it. If someone was in there now, an Ofsted inspector watching him teach, they probably wouldn't have approved of it.
Good.
But
that means he's good.
Yeah. So the style of teaching was teaching. Do you know what I mean? That's how they wanted to get taught, and it wasn't by the book, but they learned. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And and it drove him out of it in the end. And what was really sad actually was before he died, So he went back into, he got really ill from a lot of things, and he ended up coming out of teaching because it was too much. And then he went back to sort of on site doing some things, and then he wanted to go back, but he wanted to do it in a prison because he actually got taught himself in prison.
Brilliant.
And he wanted to do that, and he ended up getting a job. And literally week after he got the job, that was it. And it was just kind of like, it was almost like meant to be, you know. It was like, oh, he got his job that he always wanted, and that was it, sort of thing. So yeah.
So sometimes just the knowledge that it could be that.
Yeah, and but yeah, he absolutely loved it. The actual, every single teacher I spoke to, I've tattooed a few. They've all said they absolutely love teaching, but it's the shit around it that just makes it.
The whole again, not to get political because there's no point, but it's a very flawed system, and it feels intentional when you've been in it. It's difficult, but there are some brilliant head teachers out there, and my last head teacher being one of them, that are actively doing intentional things to make a change in the system, because that's what we need. We need forward-thinking head teachers that are willing to back up teachers that are saying, we can't do this. There has to be a different way to do it. Otherwise, I can't remember the stats for how many teachers that you lose in the first couple of years of teaching, but it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous number.
There is a shortage now, isn't there?
Yeah.
Of teaching. Massive shortage. Political. Right, so you've been teaching. How long were you teaching for?
It was 12 years
12
by the time
years?
I left.
Wow.
Yes.
And then you've started getting ill, and then this is when you've turned to what you do now.
Well,
is that right?
The process of illness was very long.
Yeah. And then it got to a point where you had to make a change.
Yes. And then I kind of did both. So I never, of course, you don't have time off to heal. Like, teachers don't do that. You go in really sick because there's not enough support if you're ill to be able to handle your class. So
how did you build it though? So what you do now, I'm guessing it's a lot through social media, and
yes.
How did that start? How did you build that from the start? And what was your sort of, was it something you wanted to do and you thought, right, I want to do this, I want to earn a living off it, and this, is that what you thought straight away, or did it just sort of grow from that?
I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was just stabbing around wildly in the dark, terrifying myself. I was starting to heal, starting to learn, starting to approach my life really differently, and my life was getting great. And then I was looking at being like, oh, not like I could help so many people. I wonder how. That I think that that's what I say to people all of the time. Having that curiosity of just being like, oh, just try. Let's just see what's going to happen. So I started to be curious around all of this, and I started to work with people that I knew, being like, what? Like, this is kind of working for me. Shall we just see? And it started to work for them. And then I started to put things, as I got braver and started to overcome that fear and anxiety, because we love skeletons in our closet, don't we? Like, we love just shutting the door and those being like, I hope to God nobody finds out about that shit that I did. Well, I started to realize that when you started to pull that stuff out, I mean, like, this doesn't feel good, and yet it feels like it's hanging off me like a noose, that it feels really liberating. And then I call the ego, Francis, that part of you that has got the key for that wardrobe, going, don't tell anyone this. You tell anyone about this, they're all going to hate you. They're all going to judge you. No one's going to like you. No one's going to talk to you, like holding that wardrobe door tight. Well, I started to let it out, and then I started to let it out on social media. And everyone was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. All I can tell you is I feel so much fucking better. Like, I'm just going to keep going. And so it started really small, and it started me just doing that. And it started me helping a few close friends, and it started to work, and it started to just all kind of knit together. So I started, like anything, the more energy you put into it, the more it's going to grow. And that is your fears, or that is your growth. And I just started to put more and more energy into growth. and into building this. And then I was like, okay, I'm teaching the same thing over and over again. So this is like a step. So I'm like, I wonder how many steps there are. So I started to get conscious and pour energy into and I started to formalize this process. I'm like, I've kind of got a process here. Let's take people through this. And it started to work. I was like, okay, I'll make some workbooks. I'll do some videos. I'll start to talk about it on social media. And people started to say, I'd like to buy that. I'm like, okay, buy it. And it just was this, I was getting up when I was still teaching. I had the boys who were tiny. My husband worked away. He was in Harrogate a couple of times a week with work, and I was still teaching the house and like busyness. So I was getting up at like 4 8. I needed 12 hours sleep and I'd still feel like poop. And there was just this energy inside me. Like I just felt alive, and I'd be like, I can get up at 4 a.m. and go to bed at like 9 and be sweet to go again. So I just started to do these insane hours of just in this flow state of creation. And I created what is now turning into a really great business. And so last April, I spoke to my head teacher just before Easter. He kept saying to me, he's like, can you do all of this? I'm like, yes, of course I can. And then it was getting to Easter. I worked Thursdays and Fridays, and it was the Wednesday, and I went to my head and I was like, I think we need to have a conversation. And he just looked at me and went, oh no. I was like, yeah. The morning of Wednesday, I said to Wade, my husband, I said, I'm going to quit teaching. He was like, fucking what? I was like, I'm doing it. Like, I'm just going to do it. He's like, are you like all that fear? Francis in the club. He's like, are you sure? Like, can we do it? Can we? I'm like, I'm just going to make it work. Like, this needs as close to 100% of me as I can give. And I can't give 100% because you're dead important to me. The boys are dead important to me. So I don't need something else taking me away from this creation, because it has to be this. And so I said to my head teacher, and he was like, okay, so when? And technically you have to give a term's notice. So I was thinking like summer, that will give me a good chunk of time to save up, like squirrel away some money, all that Francis ego stuff, like save the money, be sensible, like make sure it all makes sense. And my head teacher, who's great, said to me, well, when? I'm like, oh, I thought it had to be summer. And he went, well, if I can find somebody, do you want it to be Easter? I was like, yeah. And then he rang me that night and went, okay, we've got somebody, so you can leave at Easter. I'm like, that's in 2 days. He's like, yep. So I handed my notice in, and that was a year ago, and the business has just continued. It was exactly as I knew it would be. It's just continued to grow. So it was a slow evolution to begin with. And then it got to a point of, let's jump, let's dive in, and let's really, I knew it was a good idea. I knew it was working. Like, I don't advocate to anybody, oh, just like jump in. That makes no sense.
I love the how you knew though. Like you knew It was like, this is going to work and I'm going to make it work.
Yes.
I love that, because I really relate to that. Well, I had a conversation with someone the other day about, they're like, well, what would you do if you didn't do this? What I do now? And I said, well, to be honest, I could do anything and I'd make it work. I did it when I was at Amazon for 5 years and I made it work, you know. And I was always searching for something. This was a thing that was for years and years. I wasn't treating people probably the way they should be treated, without really realizing till now.
Yeah.
You know, and I was always searching for something and I didn't know what it was. And I thought, you know, I didn't know if it was my relationships with people and I wasn't treating people right. And I was searching for I didn't know what it was. There was just something missing, and I eventually knew that it was something I'd always been conscious about, being happy in what I do every day. And for me, my thing is when I'm drawing or painting, or that's my moment. That's when I'm, I'm free. I'm free from anything. I'm in my own world. I don't need to think about anything. This is me. I can let everything out here. This is what I want. And I knew that when I got into tattooing and I was creating art on people, I knew that this was going to work. I thought, this is all me now. Like, I could do 7 days a week, no problem. This is it. And I couldn't do 5 at Amazon. Like, we used to do 4 days a week at Amazon, the 5th day, and we do overtime on the 5th day, and it felt like I'd done a full week.
Yeah.
And now I'll do 7 days here, and it doesn't even feel like 3. You know what I mean? And I knew that when I started this, I just knew that was the thing I've been looking for. Something in my work and creating something every day was my thing, and I knew that was like a hole that had been filled. And then obviously when I met my wife, that was another thing that a big hole that was sort of filled in that as well. That was a big thing for me. I'd always felt like I was missing someone to relate to. I'd always struggled to be close with one particular person.
Yeah.
So I was with my dad. I've been really close with my dad, and then I'd always struggled with friendships. Like, I'd be close with some people for a little bit, and then they'd sort of drift off, and then I'd be friends with someone else for a little bit. I'd always have a lot of friends, just never that close. And then when I met Vic, it was just straight away like my best friend, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was just this thing. And when we first started, it was sort of like when you start meeting someone, you're all loved up and that. But then when my dad went, I knew straight away. I thought, and I'd only been with her for about a couple of months. Actually, I think I'd only been with her for a month. And I knew as soon as he went, and she turned up literally within about 40 minutes when I rang her and I said, look, this has happened. I found my dad. And she turned up in about 40 minutes, and I just thought,
yeah,
that's it. That's it.
Me.
I just knew straight away. I didn't know what it was, and I just knew that I'd put up with anything just to be with her, like, because I just knew that was it. That I didn't need to look anymore. That was my best mate right there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And them two things kind of coincided in about 3-4 years. Started tattooing, drawing, painting, found Vic, and I don't know. And now I'm thinking, right, what am I going to do now? What's it all seems to be rolling every year. I'm thinking, oh my God, that's another year gone. I've done all this stuff, and like, I've got to slow down next year. Like, I've got to slow down. And then next year I'm doing other things. I'm going abroad, working there, doing this. And it just keeps rolling this. And at some point I'm going to drop dead, I think, because this is going way too quick.
What a great way to just go. That's what I say. What a great way to just go screaming in sideways and go. I literally couldn't have done a better job of that. I couldn't have done more. That's what my aim is, to just tap out and go. Nailed it.
But what you said, you can get up at 4 a.m, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like hell to me.
Yeah.
What is it that you've changed to make you believe and think that way, that you can just get up and do that? Like, what is it that the steps that you've made to do that?
So, you know that space that you've just described, like, you just knew things just started working out. You met your best friend who's the opposite sex that you fancy the pants off. Like, these things just start showing up, and I don't believe in coincidences. That is just your, like, a notification on your phone going, that's the route. Like, you're going in the right direction. The reason that we just get hit again and again and again and again is the message of, what are you doing? Like, not this. Can you not see it's not meant to be this? How bad does it need to get for it to be different?
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
Something just come to my mind.
Good.
You know that I have a fear that how good things have been going, that went for me initially, with my work and meeting my best friend.
Yeah.
And then my dad went, and it was like, boom. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, I had to have the low to get the high.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm in a fear of this spiraling thing that's happening with my life and how it's growing, and I'm doing everything I wanted to do, and I'm waiting for the next hit, you know? Like, there's something big coming that's going to be hitting me quite hard. I'm always in fear of that.
Of course you are. that ego in the background, Francis, skeletons.
So it's really weird. My middle name's Francis, so. How weird's that?
She is there going. So the way where Francis likes to be is in the camp that you know. So if you go back to your childhood and think about your primary emotions, we don't remember all that much of the good, unfortunately. We're really good at remembering and holding on to the not so great. And why do we do that? Because it keeps us safest. It keeps the bear out of the camp and all of that stuff that I've explained. So Frances is always trying, you're her favorite person in the world. She doesn't want you to die. So she is always trying to make it super safe. So she is scared. She led my life for my whole life until I was turned 30-ish. So she is super scared, and she is always going, don't move forward. Like, what if what if you're going to die? Like, you might die. And if you die, I die. And that's the worst. So she is always there milling around in the background, trying to ruin everything. Now, you have had one of the most traumatic things that, aside from having children, and like that, it must be one of the number one things to happen to anybody. That kind of trauma shouldn't ever happen to somebody, and yet it has happened to you. Your Frances is freaking out at every opportunity, going, don't move forward, James, what if? Don't move forward, what if? And she is always there lingering in the background. So she's dangling that like a carrot. You're going too fast. Slow down. What if? But it's not real. She's just there trying to drag you back, going, please don't, because I'm scared. And your job is to go, I see you, James, that had to walk in and see that. That's intense on a different level than 90% of people won't ever have to experience. But you're okay. I've got you, mate. Let's just keep walking. We've got this.
I need to record that and put it on like a sleep. You know them sleep things where you go to sleep and you put them on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, don't you?
Yeah.
I need to record what she just said and go to sleep.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, you got that voice, that voice where you could just, when someone's talking. Actually, Vic used to do it. She used to it was like a proper sleep thing that, they put you to sleep and they're talking and they're talking really softly. You've got that voice. You should probably look into that. You might get money.
No, I lead meditation.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I do.
There you go. Wow. But yeah, I totally relate to that. I always feel like for every good, there's a bad, and there's always a balance between both. Yeah. Good tattoo. Is that Lauren? Lauren did that?
No, I can't remember who did that. That's really bad in the tattoo world, isn't it? It's my only tattoo. Mantis, his name is.
Mantis Stafford.
Yeah.
He's good.
He is. But yeah, that depicts that.
Because you know Lauren, don't you?
Yes, I do. I love her.
Yeah, she said to say hi to you.
Yeah.
How do you know Lauren?
I don't even know.
Friend of a friend sort of thing.
I think yes. Yeah. Ben from the lake fishing.
Oh, Ben,
a fisherman.
yeah. Ben, he's a tattooist as well.
That's it, yeah.
He was in the other day actually getting his head tattooed, yeah.
God.
He was in absolute agony. It was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You keep talking about the 7 steps.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to briefly mention them? Is that okay?
Yeah. If we all learn this, and I want as many people in the world to learn them, I was emailing my coach today being like, okay, I've got an idea. He must be like, oh God, Emma. Like, oh, I don't know what you've got. But like we were saying earlier, to try and get this to as many beings as practically is possible. So the steps are, I'm going through a diagnosis at the moment for adult ADHD. I've always found learning really tricky. At school, I was always in the lowest sets, just thinking, I don't get it. It's so unfair. Everybody else is, and I'm trying really hard. I just don't understand it. So the thing about what I want my work to be, and that's why I became a teacher, because I was like, I am not having a child sitting in a classroom feeling like I did, like not on my watch. And I was a really good teacher because I could do that. I want my work to be accessible to everyone and anybody. I want somebody who has never done a piece of mindset work in their entire life to just be able to pick up my work and go, well, that makes sense. Like, that's bomb. So I create these little weird anecdotal stories and references and ways to learn. But they make sense to the conscious brain. Remember, the information that we need to get into you so that you can understand that being at the football match and having a dinner is like, consciously, you know that makes no sense. So it's this part of us that we need to gain access to. But that Frances character is the gatekeeper to that part. And she is always like, no, don't go in there. Because if you start liberating yourself in there, you're going to be going off, like taking massive mortgages out on tattoo studios and going across the world and going to have to pay for flights. Like, let's not do that. Let's calm down. So in order to access that, each of the 7 steps are a little bit strange, but it seems that a lot of people like strange. So the first step is the notion, I call him monkey mind Bob, and he's that voice inside your head that just will never settle. That voice that's saying to you, things are going great. Oh, they're going great, but what if something happens and something shows up and then it all goes wrong? Nah, it won't go wrong. Like, things are going so good and we can't. Yeah, I know, but like, what happened to your dad? What if that happens to someone you really care about? Like, what? Like, that's your Bob voice, and Bob gets in the way of everything. So it's recognizing Bob, who is a knob, and how he just swings from tree to tree telling you rubbish that doesn't make any actual sense. And it's being able to create a distance from him and being able to look at him objectively and go, that doesn't make sense. Like, I'm just not going to listen to you anymore. And it's like snapping. The branches represent neurology in your brain. Something stimulates part of your brain and goes, before you're not even aware of it, goes, we're going to think about this, and then it just fires off in this peculiar way, and then you have these thoughts. And Bob has his main routes that he goes around your brain or around the branches in the wood. What my work does is snaps off a branch, and Bob just lands on his arse in the forest and goes, what was that? And you're like, I'm just not thinking that way anymore. That's what that is, Bob. Like, do one. You're not helping me. So that's the essence of Monkey Mind Bob. Triggered Tuesday is the second element. And a lot of Triggered Tuesday is based on the most incredible book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And I don't know if you're familiar with him or the book, but my God, it's terrifying, but amazing. He was a Jewish psychiatrist who was in 3 different concentration camps, and he survived. And the reason he survived pretty much is to be able to get his memoirs out to the world. And a quote that stuck with me most powerfully was, between the stimulants and the response, there is a space. And in that space lies your choice. And in that choice lies your freedom. He's saying, when stuff happens that you don't like, you respond. And for most of us, it's like that. We don't even know it's happening. Well, to make your life different, when you have that triggered response, before you react, you can actually elongate and make a space. And then when you learn to do that, you can choose into or out of, and then you can start responding to the world. You can start choosing, and then you can start seeing differently. So that's Triggered Tuesday. Wake Up Wednesday is all to do with Frances in the closet, and we've talked about her a little bit already. Thankful Thursday is the notion of the importance of gratitude. Everybody says, like, oh, you can't get more unless you're really grateful for what you've got. It's like, that's great, but I really want more. And I don't know what to do with it. So it's teaching people the skills of being able to ground themselves in a true, heartfelt gratitude for what is already theirs, what they already have. We're so focused on what lies outside of us and how that's going to be the answer. Like, oh, especially with money and things, because that's how we're conditioned. When I make my first ever like £10,000 from my own business, like that's going to feel amazing. And then you're at it and you're like, you're already looking past it and you're like, okay, well, that's great, but I want, like, that essence of more. It's teaching yourself how to ground yourself, so cement yourself in the moment, so absolutely, that everything's bonus. There isn't even a drive for more anymore. You're just like, more is great, but my God, right here is amazing. So if it gets better than this, then I'm in, but this is amazing. Feel It Friday is the 5th element, and that is all about teaching us how to connect with our feelings and our emotions. We're so scared of how we feel. We get big emotions come up and we're like, oh God, like let's shove these somewhere. Like this is really inconvenient for me to just be having, like, wanting to cry in this moment. Like, no, I'm not going to do that, especially with men and around feeling emotions. And it's so foundational to you being able to live free of everything, to be able to feel your emotions. So the question that you asked and we got sidetracked was about, how do I get up at 4 a.m. every morning? Because I'm clear. If I feel sad in that moment, Wade and the boys are like, Mommy, oh God. I'm like, I'm just feeling it, babes. Just needs to come out. And then I just move on. I look like a literal psychopath because I'll be hysterical and then I'll just move on with the next moment. And it's just moved through me rather than me just holding on to things so tightly. All these skeletons in the closet that I'm desperately trying to like stop from falling out and spilling everywhere. Bob just going AWOL all of the time. And I'm trying to make sense of all of that and think of worst case scenarios and how I'm not going to let that happen. Being out of control of all of these 7 elements meant that I just needed to sleep all of the time. And I still never felt rested. Maslow's hierarchy says that the foundation of the hierarchy is having sleep and feeling safe and having enough food. And we're all like, cool, I've got that. Let's like get to that self-actualization. But how often do we actually feel rested? We don't. We sleep, but we're not resting. So feeling our emotions and being able to do that is paramount. And then Saturday sitting is teaching people the power of their breath. It's such a basic fundamental, but we're not taught how to connect with our breath and how important being in a flow state with your breath and how connecting to your body is just paramount for being able to regulate your nervous system. And we spend so much time in a parasympathetic nervous response where your body's just freaking out. Bringing your breath into your body, and Saturday sitting teaches you how to just chill out. Like, it's fine, there's not a bear in the wood. And then Surrender Sunday is the art of surrender, the thing that we don't want to do, the thing we all just want to control everything, no, me included. Like, no, I'll just have a handle on everything and I'm going to overwork and I'm going to make sure everything's perfect or else I might implode. And that's just not the way. It's the complete opposite of how life is meant to flow. And a really powerful way to remember that is we are literally on a sphere floating in endless space, going at 1,000 miles an hour, and we're all just rocking around, sitting in a studio being like, this makes sense. It makes no sense. Yeah, here we all are pretending that it does. Just let go. When you learn to let go and trust and know that it's all going to work out, however it's going to work out anyway, no matter what you do, no matter how you try to contort it and control it, it's going to unfold the way it's going to unfold. Just stop. Life gets a lot easier. So they're my 7 steps.
Wow. And how long did they take you to put together?
You know what? I've never actively sat down and thought about it. Years, probably, realistically. Years of relentless falling on, like you said earlier, just falling on your ass. And
what are so the clients you have at the minute, what are the most common sort of traits of the clients that are coming to you? What are the main issues they're having, and are they just struggling through life? Do you have sort of severe depression, anxiety? What are your sort of main themes?
It's anxiety.
Yeah.
It's people who have anxiety and they want more from life. Something that I use, you're not here to exist, you're here for more than this. That's something that I say over and over again. It's people that are done experiencing this world through their teeny tiny, because we see the world through this teeny tiny little microscopic hole that we've carved out for ourselves. Like, they're done just looking through that little tunnel vision. They're like, let's let some light in here and let's approach it all in a really different way. And they're up for being challenged. They're up for change. It's most often people that have met their edge of, I don't know what else I'm going to do unless I do this. It's a lot of people that have been, like myself, through traditional therapies that just didn't work. I'm like, that's great. Like, I can tell you all the shit that's going around my head. What am I going to do about it now? Like, what's next? Because it can't be this.
I totally get that.
Sorry, I stopped really abruptly then.
I was a bit
stared
like...
at you. I know, I realised that.
Right, one little thing. We're coming sort of to the end now.
Okay.
This is a bit of a wild question, but have you ever thought about doing or experimenting with psychedelics?
Yes, I think about that a lot.
Have you ever experimented with psychedelics?
I've been conditioned, like, drugs are bad, and I've always been a good girl. Like, no, good girls don't do drugs. And now, as my levels of awareness are expanding, I went to Russell Brand's community festival a couple of weekends ago and had some of the most profound experiences through breath work and meditations. And it has been something that I'm like, oh, you could reach that space. But my meditations now, I think I say in the book that I'm writing at the moment that I was at a point in my life when I would have done anything to escape what I was in. And I found a guy called Goenka who teaches Vipassana meditation, which is a really powerful breath work. And I was like, I'm so glad that I found Goenka instead of Pablo Escobar, because my life would have been on a really different path, because I'd literally have done anything. So yeah, as I was moving along, I'm like, oh, you can get, because it's the pineal gland, it's stimulating that pineal gland that then gives you that, well, you can do that with your breath. Like, you can literally
it was funny, actually,
do that with your breath.
We was having a conversation yesterday down, was it yesterday? Yeah, a couple of days ago, down here with a couple of the artists, and Lauren mentioned you and how you'd done that with breath work, because Lauren's into psychedelics, and it's something that I'm starting to look at now. And my nan's going to be absolutely turning now that I'm saying this, but yeah, it's
sorry, Auntie Mary.
It's just it's something that has been on my mind for a couple of years now, and it's something that I'm sort of thinking about with my art as well, and listening to people who have done it. I've tattooed a guy who's done DMT, and this really opened my mind to it. Really, he was actually a Muslim, and he went to have this DMT experience in South America, like an ayahuasca. He had a full sort of couple week break out there, and he come back and he didn't have a religion anymore. He didn't believe in, and his mind was so open, and he believed in that they were all connected and we're all part of the same thing, and it was unreal. It was actually unreal what he was telling me, and I was just thought, you know what, that's something that I need to start. Like, it's something, them things that when you come, when I'm 80, 90, I don't want to look back and think, I wish I just tried that. You don't know what you're going to find in yourself and the world.
It's
doing
magic.
it. So that's something I'm thinking about doing at the minute. But
try your breath.
So this breath, how did you come across that? Was that through the books? And
it was me in a desperate hour just Googling what the fuck, essentially. And this guy he's died now, which makes me sad, because I would have loved to have met him and just connected with him. Because being in people's physical energy is even more intense than being watching what they do. He taught me, so he does 10-day retreats. So you go to a Vipassana center for 10 days, you fast, you eat once a day, and you just meditate for the whole time, and you don't talk to anyone for 10 days.
Oh, I think it was a documentary about this.
Intense. It's my dream. I'm definitely going. I don't want to leave the boys for 10 days yet, but yes, doing something like that will have that same kind of profound, it's a less instant, but it will have a similar profound impact. And he recorded his 10-day retreat, and at the end of every day on the retreat, he would give an overview of kind of some Dharma teachings, and just it's got no religious affiliation whatsoever. It was just teaching you how to be a human being and how to get the most out of your life. And I made my own little silent retreat for 10 days. So the babes were small. Wade was working away a lot. So every night, like obviously when I was with my boys, like we'd play and we'd do all of those things, but they slept a lot. They napped a lot. So when they did, I would meditate and I would be silent, and I cut myself off from everybody else. And I listened to Goenka every night for the 10 days. And that was kind of the start of me realizing the power that literally lay inside me. It was madness.
Wow. I'm going to have to try this.
Yeah, you do. Honestly, I'm so passionate about breath work. I'm so passionate. It's powerful. It's so powerful.
Right, Emma, it's been an absolute pleasure having you.
It's been great.
In today. I could talk to you for another 2, 3, 4 hours. Absolutely. Maybe we'll have to have a coffee at some point.
Yeah, that sounds good.
But no, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and you're a very inspiring person. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people from this that are going to be, taking a lot from it, and I appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me. You're incredible. You're doing incredible things. And my mum, when I was saying that this was happening, said she still can't get over when you came to our house as a babe and drew the Titanic on a chalkboard. She couldn't wash it off for like months. She's like, don't touch it. It's James's art. So to see all of this you're incredible.
No, it's good that we're doing something we both love and enjoy, and that's liberating in itself. So no, thank you again. And I can't wait to have another coffee with you. And you haven't even drank any of your tea yet, have you?
No, I'll get to it then.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Basically, what we started to do on the podcast was before each person leaves, they ask a question for the next guest without knowing who it is.
Oh.
But the last guest we had we forgot basically to ask him to do it. So Rob's going to give me a question. Okay. Yeah.
And I need to think of a question for
someone
guest.
else. You don't have to say it now.
Oh, okay, cool.
You write it down.
Pressure.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah,
pressure
you write
off.
it down.
Okay.
Just wait for Rob and his
questions. Question, Rob.
You sending it on Facebook?
I'll tell you.
What?
I'll tell you now.
Would you
Go on,
rather?
Go on.
What do you think the world will look like in 5 years?
What do you think the world will look like in 5 years?
Okay.
What do you mean by that? Like what it looks like, or what it'll be like? What?
I can interpret it, can't I?
Yeah, you can interpret it your way. Yeah, go on.
Okay, this is where everybody thinks that I'm mental, because I just see good. I know there's a lot going on at the moment. I am not naive. I am very aware. And yet, what sits inside me over and over again is I'm not into hope. I think hope is a bit of a waster. I like grace. I've got a lot of time and energy for grace. I think grace comes in to my life in some incredible spaces, and she just says, you didn't know. You could only do the best that you were capable of doing. And yet, right now, we both know that's not good enough. But for this question, hope comes in. I have a lot of hope. I think what we're seeing is movement. I think what we're seeing is a people tiring of the way it's been for a very long time. What I see is a new direction, and it's going to take time. But I think there are more powerful beings who see in a different way, that are starting to move in directions, and things have had to come to this crescendo in so many different ways. And yes, I know Trump might get back in, like, as I'm saying this, it's like, oh God, how intense does it need to get? But I think these intensities are coming so that like you said earlier, that extreme side, there's always an opposite side of the coin. And I think we're preparing for that opposite side of the coin. So I think in the next 5 years, if I had to define it, I think in one word, a shift. That's what hope and a shift. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. I was talking to a client the other day about this politically, the way the country is at the minute with energy bills and all these sorts of things that are going a bit crazy. And I think there is going to be a revolt and a change, and it is going to take time for that to happen. I mean, you look at things like us leaving the EU and Trump getting in America and all these crazy things happening. It's because people want a bigger change. Do you know what I mean? They're not going with the flow. They want a bigger change. And people always say to me, like, why do you not vote in politics? And I say, I don't vote because I want a bigger change. I'm not voting for the one that bullshits the most. I'm voting for a bigger change in what's happening.
Why would I vote in a broken system that doesn't impact any change?
Yeah, exactly that. Good answer. Right, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
No problem.